Welcome, everyone, to the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival. This week, we are in our virtual festival, and we are pleased to have the opportunity to interview a number of film directors, and you'll be able to watch the recordings here on our website through December. So we highly recommend you watch the film first, and then you come back and listen to the recording with the film director. The Jewish Film Festival is sponsored by the Alan and Joan Bildner Center for the Study of Jewish Life here at Rutgers University in New Brunswick. I know many of you are across the state and in other locations, so we really appreciate that you are joining us for our festival and for our speaker talks. I'm delighted today that we're talking about the film, The Therapy, and we have the director of the film, Zvi Landsman, with us. He is a Jerusalem-based filmmaker, and his production company is Treehouse Productions. You'll note the logo here behind Zvi. The Therapy received a Sundance Institute Documentary Fund grant and the jury award at the DocAviv International Film Festival in Israel. Zvi is a graduate of the Sam Spiegel School of Film and Television. He was a cinematographer of the Oscar shortlisted film, The Mute's House. He's the director of Your Warmth, a short film that participated in more than 30 LGBT festivals worldwide, and cinematographer of the award-winning documentary, The Museum, which we screened at the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival back in 2019. One of the cinematographers. Thank you. Yes. That was the last time we were in person, actually, when we showed The Museum, a fabulous film. And today we have asked Ali Mandel to interview Zvi. Ali is a clinical psychologist in school and private practice, dealing with teenagers, many of whom are Orthodox and some who are struggling with sexual orientations. So the topics raised in the film are a somewhat familiar area for her. Ali also serves on the film selection committee of the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival, and we greatly appreciate her time with the festival. So I'll turn it over to the two of you. Disappearing, I'll come back at the end.
Hi, Zvi. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. When Karen asked me to do this interview, I was very excited because as a therapist, I'm used to meeting people for the first time in my office and kind of going in cold with no background, no familiarity, no history. And I've always been fascinated by the difference between an interview and a therapy session. So your film kind of really brings that to the fore. But for me personally, this is going to be a very exciting experience because of all the prep work that goes into doing an interview. It's so different than a therapy session. But I will start.
How about
How
about the difference between a therapy session and making a movie? There are many lines.
Many lines that cross, right? And I've also said to Karen, you know, my secret fantasy was always to be a movie reviewer. And so when she asked me to join the committee, now I get all of my interests met. But I do want to start with sort of the same initial question that I'll start a therapy session with, which is, can you tell us a little bit about your background, and maybe specifically focusing now on your current relationship with Orthodox Judaism, because I know that that's how you grew up.
Yeah, so first, thank you for having me here. I grew up in a religious Orthodox Jewish home in the south of Israel, a town called Yerucham. My parents are religious from different type of streams, modern religious, modern Orthodox. My mother is a feminist, so is my father, I think. In theory, anyway. Yeah, I grew up believing in equality and also that there are different sexual orientations. But when I did come out to my parents as gay, when I was 19, they did struggle with it a little bit. It wasn't an easy thing to accept that, their child is now going to have a totally different lifestyle than they imagined or thought they'd have. And I had to kind of convince them that that doesn't mean that I will necessarily be unhappy, alone, with no family of my own, and all the bad things that they thought are the destiny for homosexuals. Luckily for me, they understood that pretty fast, and they've been with me and backing me up ever since. But coming from an Orthodox home, I also dated people from Orthodox backgrounds. And that's when I got to know conversion therapy through other people that grew in the same community. And most of them had been in some type of conversion therapy, be it conversations with their rabbi, or be it something more, something more elaborate, like we see in the film.
Okay, so
and that includes my someone that I've been in a relationship with for 8.5 years.
You mentioned that, I guess, at the very end of the movie, right? That was sort of, where what I was thinking while I was watching the movie is, why was this the particular story that you wanted to tell through this particular lens of conversion therapy? There are several movies that I've seen about homosexuality in the Orthodox community. Nothing ever really touching on this particular aspect of it. And so you kind of answered that question for me at the end in that last bit when you're talking to Ben. And you mentioned that you had a partner who was in conversion therapy. So what was interesting to me again is what sort of compelled you to want to tell the story through the lens of conversion therapy? What did you want the audience to take away, right? You touch on so many themes, family, mental health, right? There's so much in there. I'm curious how you arrived at the place where this was the jumping off point and the lens that you wanted to tell the story through.
Yeah. So to me, films are a way to share an experience, and less of a way to tell people what to think, to educate people and to convince people. I think they could be educated and convinced, but I feel that this is an art form that is best when it's allowed for the viewers to do that for themselves. If they choose to change their minds, they'll change it. It's not up to me to actually, get in there and try to
manipulate
program. Yeah.
Unlike the conversion therapists that you.
Unlike the conversion therapists, definitely. And that's what I think in life, and that's what I think in filmmaking. So my motivation when I was with my boyfriend at the time, I wanted to share what he's shared with me, what he's been through, also before we met when he was in conversion therapy, and also while we were together, what he was struggling with, which is to show how hard it is for people to come out of this world, to change their opinions, their perspectives, and change their lives and start over again in a different type of life, because it's not a clear cut. It's not very easy. It's not like if you stop attending these meetings, you're okay. You're on a different track, and that's it. It kind of goes with you and stays with you. So I felt like I wanted to share and also share what he's been through in the past, which is what conversion therapy is like from within. And it was clear to me also that this is like this could be a historical documentation, because there is no documentation of conversion therapy from within. And, it changes all the time. So it may very well be that the documentation in this film is the only documentation. It is the only documentation of conversion therapy now, of actual conversion therapy. And it may be the only one in the future, because it's bound to change and take on different shape. So that was kind of my end point. But I want to go with this also to I think when you see in the end of the film, you can see my approach, the way I just explained it about, my approach to the viewers is the same approach that I had with my partner when I was, seeing him through getting out of conversion therapy, and also with Ben. It's the same approach, and I think it's the approach that you also mentioned as a therapy that is not conversion therapy. A therapy that is not conversion therapy doesn't tell you what to think, doesn't tell you what your direction must be, and lets you find your way in life. And it's just like holding your hand, knowing that there's someone there for you, and someone that sees you, someone that can mirror what you're going through, and help you become more you, and just going with you wherever you go. And I think, in that moment when Ben understood that I was also gay, and I was there with him the whole time without, telling him what to do and what to be, and he broke into tears. I think, and also he told me afterwards that he all of a sudden understood that he wasn't alone through all of that. He felt very, very alone. He was the only person in his life that really knew what he was dealing with while he was dealing with it. And then he understood I was there the whole time. Didn't want to intervene, didn't want him to know who I am all the way, in order for it not to, change his choices. And he felt that was very, very important for him. And till this day, he sees the film as a super positive experience for him in his life, and something that was very empowering. I think it's because it gave him the voice to find, it gave him a way to find and define and speak out his own voice, and it wasn't my voice.
It was a very, sorry, I'm just jumping in, a very, very authentic, therapeutic moment, really, quite honestly, watching that scene, a real sort of catharsis, right? Just looking at his face, watching something sort of dawn on him, and that internalized experience of the connection that I think he'd been seeking all along. And, you just said a lot, and there are a lot of directions that I want to go in based on what you're saying, but I want to just ask you, how did you identify Ben and Lev? How did you sort of, it's fascinating, the access that you were provided, how you got into those therapy sessions. Just let's hear a little bit about those pieces first.
Yeah, so that was indeed the biggest challenge in the film. Like, I decided that I wanted to document conversion therapy in real time, and I kind of knew that's impossible. And impossible things really, attract me. So I really tried to do that, and it took me about 3 years to find someone that is going through conversion therapy and would be willing to be filmed. And eventually it was not one, but it was two. It was Lev and Ben. And I had kind of identified from the very beginning that Lev is probably going to stay in this world, and going to just, I thought actually that, through the film, he'll eventually get married. And I didn't anticipate that he kind of stayed still in terms of developing in that direction through the making of the film. And I did anticipate that Ben, when I started filming, he was all for conversion therapy. And I kind of felt that he's going to change, and he's going to become someone that opposes conversion therapy. Because I'd seen that, I'd seen my boyfriend go through that exactly, and I kind of felt that Ben was in the same spot. So quickly I wrote,
different developmental times, different needs for them, right? The age difference between them. But how did you get into the meetings?
Yeah, so that took another 1.5 years of connection, of communication, of filming. Pretty quickly, they let me film the one-on-one sessions, because that was just Lev's choice, and his therapist also, through those 3 years that that I've been working to get that access, this therapist also got to know me and understand that I'm curious to show the therapy as it is and not to try and make it into something different. And I'm going to let them explain what they're doing and count on the viewers. And also, I did tell them I will show opposite opinions and criticism will be heard in the film, but I would let them speak for themselves. And that's why he agreed to be in the film. But then it took me another 1.5 years of filming until the group and the group leader, Eric, is, student name in the film, that they agreed to be in the film. And that was also just a matter of slow building up relationships and trust. And they felt that they could really trust me, that even though I am not from their world, I probably don't subscribe to their point of view, I am interested in letting them explain it and making them understood, even if people will not agree with it. I personally think that, you can't agree with that, but I think you can think that without, while you listen to them. I think you can listen to them and understand what I see, that it doesn't work and it's not positive, a positive direction for these people to go to.
What was really interesting is there's just that one conversation, I guess, between Ben and, is his name Matthew?
Matthew is the activist, the social
from Born Perfect,
activist.
right? From
Born Perfect, the New York-based organization, yes.
So I felt that was really the only moment in the film where there was a viewpoint through which, the participants were communicating, and there was a ton of breathing room in the rest of the movie, right? It was just, you were just simply following the characters. And when you talked about
I did help like the story develop. I did help Ben to get to meet people that, like, I encouraged him to do the research, to interview these people and to hear their standpoints and have to deal with it in his own life. And I kind of made the film progress through that, but I made it so that it would be an authentic journey of him getting to know all these different opinions that are out there in the secular world that he's migrated to. And I just made sure that he'd meet them in front of our camera.
Was it clear to you Ben's turning point? What was the sort of catharsis for the actual shift?
Yeah, so many times in films, or sometimes in films, we start a little bit after, like, the seed has been planted, and only when the person starts to have to deal with the consequences of something that happened before. So I understood also already from speaking to him, as soon as he was in the secular world and that he was going to university and he was trying to prove to his professors, and we've documented part of that, that conversion therapy is good, it was clear to me that the tipping point already happened.
Yeah.
Once he's not inside the Orthodox world, once there are no more super horrifying consequences to coming out of the closet, once he's surrounded by people that think that being gay is okay, there is no need for conversion therapy in his life. And slowly, it was clear to me that it's going to, the driving force is going to be looser and looser, and he's going to drop out. But the tipping point in terms of, like, during the film was definitely that scene with Matthew. Matthew was very persistent. He felt like, he doesn't speak that way with people in conversion therapy usually, but he felt he felt Ben can take it, and he also felt like this is an opportunity the only opportunity I have to touch on this person's life, and he's serious. He's doing research on this, and I should take this opportunity now. He made that choice. It had a price. Ben hated his guts for months.
Did he? I'm sure. It's a very, very painful realization, I'm sure, for Ben too, right? It's one thing to recognize that there are problems, to say the least, with conversion therapy. It's another thing to kind of come to terms with the reality of your therapist and that relationship that has probably taken him through so many different journeys and so much pain, to kind of say conversion therapy is one thing, but he was so convinced that what he was doing at that point was no longer conversion therapy, right? Holding dearly onto the relationship with his therapist, that kind of breakup, I'm sure, was the last place of resistance for him.
Yeah, that's the thing with this type of therapy, is that you rely emotionally on the person who's your therapist.
I know.
May be that way in a regular therapy, and it's that way definitely in conversion therapy also. And that's a lot to lose when someone is telling you your therapist is bad for you.
Especially when you've lost so many other relationships in your life, right? That's kind of what you're saying too. It's a life jacket. It must have been very difficult for him.
Yeah, now they're good friends. Matthew flew in for the film's premiere in the DocAviv Film Festival, and they got to meet again. And I sat down with them, and they kind of went through everything. And Ben did recognize that made an impact on his life, even though it was not pleasant at the time. He's happy that it happened.
Can we talk about Lev for a few minutes? Because
yes,
Lev is perhaps one of the most sympathetic, tragic characters that I've seen on screen. My heart as a therapist broke for this man. His struggles, his vulnerability, his way of expressing himself, his deep pain. It was so raw and so vulnerable. And, watching just sort of your framing shots, as we spoke of, right? So many close-ups, which creates so much, emotional heat in watching the movie. I'm very curious to hear a little bit about Lev and his broken heart. That's what I just couldn't believe, that scene in the conversion therapy group, and how willing he was to allow that to be shown in a movie.
Yeah, I could cry again just thinking about these moments, and being behind the camera and seeing these stuff unravel in front of
unbelievable.
my eyes. Yeah, it was not the first time that he's completely shocked me in him being filmed. I did one preparatory interview with him before we got going. I heard from this therapist that he found someone that is willing to be filmed. So I went to Bet Shemesh to meet him where he lives, and we had a conversation. He was the absolute most boring person I'd ever met. He only spoke about Orthodox rules and stuff like that. You kind of see a pinch of that in the conversation with his daughter, when he's he's trying to pull time before he tells her that he's gay. So he just talks about, I don't know, it's Rosh Chodesh, I need to daven, I need to whatever. So that was kind of the conversation. I thought, like, okay, this is a bad character for a film, but he's what I got. We have to get going with this. And then the first time I shot him, he was so open in front of the camera, like something else came out. I feel like he's been waiting for this opportunity to be listened to, and to know that people actually want him to show up for himself. And every time we were filming, that's miraculously what came out. And he's just made me cry every time I filmed him, basically.
His pathos, right? His humanity, it's so apparent. And I wonder if it's so interesting that he would choose to be filmed, given, right, that it seems that the only place he can actually be who he is in these conversion therapy groups, right? And I'm imagining that's, it's paradoxical, because the intention of the group is to move him away from this. But it felt to me very much that his freest time, and that's why he's clinging to the need for the group, because where else does he have the opportunity to be who he is?
Yeah, and this is something that I knew from the beginning, is that's what's happening there. And I knew it from my ex, from my boyfriend at the time. He told me when we got started together, he was still kind of under the influence of the therapy and thinking that it did him good. And he would tell me, "You don't understand. This is the only place I could come out in. These are people, the only people that accepted me from who I am. These are people I could tell I feel like killing myself, and they would understand and they would support me. This is what I had there. So don't say it was all bad." Today he does think it was all bad, but
right.
Sorry?
This is part of why it's so insidious and so dangerous, is because you create this dependency, right?
Yes,
kind of need this.
It exists in a world. It exists in a world where there is nothing else, nothing else, no other place, no place for these people to be who they are, except the closest that they can be in is in these groups that their intention is for them to stop feeling the way that they feel.
Right, and that's
so they're trapped in that. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel very like content that I was able to document this exact mechanism that is going on there.
Right, it's a very sophisticated machine that they're running. You know, you create a dependency and a need, and then you do this nefarious, dirty work of, and they do it. I was curious to ask about the training of these therapists, because it's done in such a very, very specific programmatic way. I can, you know, as a therapist, right, I was really watching what was going on from a therapeutic standpoint, because the deep level of dependency and the use of words of healthy and authentic and whole, right, where I don't know if in Hebrew, you know, the word, the Jedi mind tricks from Star Wars, like how you're playing really, really, really with people's minds. It's incredibly, incredibly dangerous what goes on there. And I'm curious of the training of these therapists. Are they people with PhDs? Are they people who are trained by other, is it just sort of this cult conversion therapy that goes on? But how?
It's a little complicated. The people that initiated conversion therapy were trained therapists, and many of them still are. Many places, it's not legal for trained therapists or for therapists with a license to do conversion therapy. In Israel, for example, the Association of Psychology banned conversion therapy. So if you are a licensed professional therapist, you may lose your license if you do that. It never actually happened in Israel, although there are cases that there were complaints and so forth, but no one actually lost their license. But just the fact that they may lose their license makes many of them not take on actual professional training and not have a license to begin with, and then no one can
regulate them.
Can regulate them, yes, and they can just do it. It's just two people in a room talking, so you can't really put up any laws against that. So people try to regulate it through laws, and there is a lot of an effect of motivation. If there is a law, if it's considered illegal, it does matter to people whether they look for it or not. But most of these are not professional trained therapists, and therefore they can't be regulated.
They still seem to have some sort of.
Oh yeah, they have a method.
They're doing something. They have a manual, clearly.
Yes. So there are a couple of different streams in this therapy, but I documented the biggest stream today, which is called reparative therapy. And this is very much based in psychological theories and psychological practices. They're taking a lot from the profession of psychology and kind of adapting it slightly, but in very important points to their agenda. So they have an organization, a global organization, it's called Brothers Road. It operates from the United States. That's where it was formed. And this organization runs workshops all over the world. And the therapists that I documented are they're kind of affiliated with that organization, and they do themselves workshops outside of Israel also. So, and Israel, by the way, is the second largest conversion therapy community in the world. The first is the United States. We're second, and then you have places like Poland and other places in Europe. And other types of conversion therapy, of course, unfortunately exist in the third world, but it's different.
Can you, I just want to go back a bit to Lev and talk to me about why you think he needed to share his story on the screen.
Well, it's assumptions from my end, because I really babbled with this. Do you say babbled? Baffled?
Baffled. You were baffled. Yeah.
So I tried to think what's going on, and I feel that through this film, because he's showing who he is the way he sees it, it's a way for him to change the way he is seen in his own mind, like the way he thinks he's seen, from being a victim to being a hero. When people didn't know
that language that you're using, right? That sort of probably really appeals to him, because that's the technique that comes forth in the conversion therapy group, right? It's all about empowering you to make choices and to say, I don't want to live a gay lifestyle, right? Whatever that is. I am a man who happens to like men, right? They really try to split it out of your identity, put it over here, and say, then you can really persevere and become empowered enough to put these urges aside. And right, so it's like that splitting off that they're asking people to do. And so what you're saying is really interesting in light of the techniques that he's been subject to all these years, that's sort of he's now bringing it into his life in being willing to speak with you.
Yes, you may say this is a continuation of what he's doing in his therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when he lived his life before the film, he was just another, in the eyes of people around him, he was just another guy that for some reason takes too long to get married.
Yeah.
What's up with him? Why doesn't he, make the phone call to this woman that I gave him her phone number? What's his problem?
Right.
So they didn't know what he was dealing with, and he felt, I think, just a victim of hardships. But through the film, he could demonstrate, look, I am putting up a fight. I'm a hero. I'm doing the right thing. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot out of me to live this life. I think that it's the right thing to do. The people that that are like him or share the same opinion like him, also think that this is the right thing to do. So he's becoming a hero. He's becoming appreciated for the efforts that he's doing. So I think in his own mind, that was a way to do that, to go up on stage and say, I'm doing something important. And I think this is one of in my understanding, it's a terrible tragedy that these people are gifted and beautiful and wonderful and sensitive and talented. They could do so much with their time for themselves and for other people around them. And so much of that is going on the effort to deal with their homosexuality. So that's like something that's hard for me to see, these choices that they're making and doing all this effort for that.
Do you have any updates? Well, first of all, this movie, I guess, got completed during coronavirus, right? That was sort of, so 2 years ago you finished?
We finished less, like a year and a half ago. It was the 4th of July, 2021 was the premiere in DocAviv. Yeah.
Do you have any updates on how they are doing now? I'm curious, Ben, it seems like his trajectory was going to be pretty clear. He was able to sort of move forward. I'm curious to hear if you're still. Lev,
So yeah, sorry.
no, I'm saying, Lev, I'm so curious if the movie moved him forward. He doesn't need the conversion therapy space anymore to be who he is if he was willing to go so public. But I'm going to imagine that not much has changed for him.
So with Lev, I always, from the beginning, I always dealt with this question, how the film is going to impact his life, because I felt like I have a responsibility. And I do believe I have a responsibility if I'm making this intervention in a person's life and I'm a professional and they're just, people. I need to consider what this may change in his life. And he's taking a huge risk. He's going to, for the first time, come out to his whole community, to the whole world, to his family, to his children, to everyone. How is this going to impact his life? So I imagined lots of different scenarios. And the only thing I could never imagine would ever happen is the thing that happened. And that is nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. I did not understand at the time what a master he is in keeping things toned down to the way they are and to just like freezing his life the way they are and not moving it anywhere. So that's where it is.
As a psychologist, right, just watching his figure on the screen, I think part of what was so tragic is it seemed clear to me that nothing would change for him after this movie. That's why I'm asking the question. His vulnerability, I think he needed the catharsis of the movie, but his defenses are so strongly structured that there was no penetrating that. That's just what it is. So I know that was not the outcome you expected, but I'm not so surprised that he's just sort of continuing on.
Yeah, so he still goes to the therapy. His children dealt with him coming out, and everything is okay now. Everything is the same. He's doing the same. He has a role. He's a president of a synagogue. Still, everything is exactly the same. He doesn't talk about it to people around him so much. He has a blog. Okay. That's where he expresses himself. He opened a blog, and I think it's Lev the Therapy or something like that. And he shares his ideas and thoughts over there, and people are welcome to write to him.
The community
he also has a Facebook.
Community did not shun him, I'm assuming.
No, and I think he just found a way to communicate to everyone that just leave it alone. Just don't talk to me about it. Don't deal with it. Don't mention it. Just ignore it. Let's move. Let's be the same. And that's the kind of transmission that he's managed to give everyone, and everyone are just, saying, okay.
A person's defenses to manage that kind of cognitive dissonance have got to be incredibly, incredibly strong, right? Ben, what's with him?
Ooh. Ben is blooming wonderfully. I'm very, we're good friends now, and I'm very happy all the time to see him progressing. I should say he had a very difficult time, and he's still struggling with the relationships with his family. That kind of stayed the way it was in the film, like his relationship with his father.
Yes.
Yeah, but Ben has been persistent in demanding his rights from his father and from his family, that they should accept him the way he is and respect his choices, and not condition, like you may come to our home only if you do this, only if you do that. It's still kind of a battle that he's fighting. There are wins and there are losses, losses, but he's working on that, and he's also now an activist for gay rights in Jerusalem. He's a staff member in the Jerusalem Open House, which is the queer community center here in Jerusalem. And he's been a very vocal activist against conversion therapy. He's writing about it.
Has he found a new therapist?
Yes. He definitely has. Yeah, I still don't know how to do this, but I'm trying to find a way to help him financially to get this therapy, because he doesn't get support from his parents,
Family,
obviously,
yes.
to do that. And he's just, starting out life, and he has debts from being a student.
Yeah.
So
It's not a cheap prospect, this process.
yeah. So we're hoping to have like a campaign for people like him, for people to be able to help.
For mental health in Israel, in this community.
Yeah, for people that has been through conversion therapy, and most of them are in the same situation. They have debts, they don't have their support from their families, and they are in serious need for therapy that will, help with this situation.
It's a struggle, it really is. Okay, I know we are going to need to wrap up, but I'm curious, the very end of the scene, right, the last part of the movie is talking about this bill that the future is sort of unknown. And I'm curious, I know you had Bechirot today in Israel, right?
Yes, we're recording this in the day of elections. I'm actually coming back from filming. My next film is in the ultra-Orthodox community in Jerusalem also.
Hey, wait, hold on. No, I want that to be my last question. I want to ask about your project. So leave that there for a second. And then if you could just
so about the bill
and whether or not the outcome of this election is going to impact that.
Yes, so the bill passing the first voting in the film was a miracle. These things don't usually work in Israel because of the power of the ultra-Orthodox parties. And, so somehow one voting passed, but of course the government was the government fell, and it's back to square one. So if miraculously we have a government now that is more left-wing and liberal, then maybe it could happen again, and happen enough times, because it requires 3 times votings for the bill to become a law. So, we should see and hope.
Yeah, okay. And my last question is, can you please tell us about your next project?
Yeah, so it's a film about a person called Yaakov Israel Dehan. He is an ultra-Orthodox, anti-Zionist, openly homosexual Jew from the beginning of the 20th century.
Wow.
That was the spokesperson for the anti-Zionist Orthodox movement in Jerusalem, while publishing homosexual literature in the Netherlands, where he grew up. But he lived here in Jerusalem, and he was assassinated in the first political assassination in modern Israel, 1924. And I'm making a film about his life and about his heritage. To this day, he is a hero for ultra-Orthodox people here in Jerusalem, and queer freedom fighters in Jerusalem and in the Netherlands. So I just came back from filming a protest against participating in the elections by the ultra-Orthodox anti-Zionists here in Jerusalem. And
when can we expect to see this film?
I hope to be finished in 1 year, and then you'll be able to see it in about a year and a half, something like that.
And the life of the therapy now, it sounds like it's won an award. I'm curious just how it's been received, how the releases have been going, and just to hear about that.
Yeah. So we're distributed by an LA company, the Film Collaborative, and we premiered in North America in the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. We screened in the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival, in your festival, in various festivals in the United States and in Europe. We've been in like 18 film festivals so far, and counting. And we're looking for deals with distributors of streaming and broadcast in the United States and the world. So if anyone knows anyone, so
was the film shown widely?
You can find me on Facebook. Sorry?
Was the film shown widely in Israel as well?
Yes, it made a very powerful impact in Israel. The Minister of Health came to the premiere and attended and heard us talking in the panel. Later, he issued a statement prohibiting conversion therapy by his office. It's not actually a legal ban because it wasn't a law. It was just like a declaration of intent or like a condemnation of the Ministry of Health against conversion therapy. But that made an impact here in Israel. So now, of course, the government is changing. But anyway, it feels like we had a serious impact here. We were all over the news and so forth. So I felt like in our small community of Israel, there was an impact.
Okay. Well, this has been a pleasure. I wish
Thank you. You too.
projects much hatzlacha. Good luck.
Toda rabba.
Well, and that you keep fighting the good fight. You're doing good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
My pleasure.
And I'll just add my thanks to both of you for really a fascinating conversation. So much about, I think, Zvi, lots of times we were talking really about the film, how is it made, how is it shot, but because of Ali's background and your openness, we could really hear about a whole different kind of conversation. So we really appreciate that. It was really so interesting. Thank you so much. Good luck with the film and your next film. Please keep in touch with us. Let us know the progress. We're an annual festival, so we look forward to it.
I hope to see you here in 2 years then.
I hope so. Okay, got it. All right. Thank you both. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.